All right, so you want to learn Vivaldi's Summer. Look, I don't blame you. It's one of the most recognizable violin pieces out there. I'm not just talking about classical music, right? It's also recognizable in pop, TV, social media, you name it. And the best part about it is it's not actually that difficult, especially if you know what you're doing. In today's video, I'm going to be revealing those types of secrets and teaching you how to play Vivaldi Summer like a pro. Let's get started. So Vivaldi Summer actually has 3 movements, but for the sake of today's video, I'm going to be tackling the most popular one, which is the Presto. This is the one that probably brought you to click on this video in the first place. By the way, if you are interested in winning a free violin, yes, I'm giving away 100 free violins from Kennedy Violins through our practice challenge on Tonic. So if you don't know what Tonic is this platform where people from around the world, musicians, can come together, practice together, motivate each other, and play and share music. If that sounds fun and interesting to you, where you could be a winner by just simply signing up for the challenge, which is free, by the way, sign up here either on this QR code on the screen or click on the link in my description below. Let's get to the summer. Now, this one is the one that everyone knows, and it starts like this. With the beginning, you should know that there are a few things that make it, I guess, better. The first being the pulse. This is really important. It's kind of like what gives you that headbanging effect that pop music often has. And it's why people often compare this to Baroque version of rock music. So that is like basically having the intention of being not every note is equal and then selective about which notes are more important. So it's usually the downbeat right. And then when you do it fast, it becomes quite impressive. Another thing to take note is to vary up your spiccato. The spiccato is basically the bouncing effect of the bow. It's a bit like bouncing a ball, like a tennis ball. You have to be intentional. There's 2 parts to the bounce. There's a part that you bounce downwards and you make that force go downwards, and then you have to time the upwards motion so that you don't bounce it again until it reaches the height, the zenith of the bounce, and then you have that downward force again. You have to be quite intentional about that. That's something that you can just practice. It's all about the wrist movement and finding that bounce located in your bow. The slower the spiccato, the more, I guess, towards the middle, and then it goes towards the upper half if it's lighter. So we'll be using both types, right? The lighter stuff for the later on parts, like those pitter-patter moments of the rain, as well as the heavier type of spiccato for these types of the thunderstorms. This is what this piece is all about. It's about the summer storms. Then you have the second part. So remember what I talked about. We've got pulse, we've got spiccato. There's a third thing that you need to just keep in mind here, which is phrasing. What is phrasing? It's kind of like the build-up. You know in pop music how there's all these kinds of builds and then there's a beat drop? That kind of drop is the release of the phrase. And in classical music, we do it a little sooner. We can have phrases within larger phrases, right? For example, what I just played, that was one phrase. But then within that section, you can have these sort of, you can have that crescendo towards to the next pulse. With that kind of feeling, you have these mini phrases within the larger phrase. And then you go into the next section. The thing to keep in mind is that the pulse can happen even when you're not playing. What I mean by that is you have to feel the pulse even in a rest. And then you slam down on the next note. That will give you that effect. You gotta be intentional about doing this. You can't be shy. So that brings me to the fourth thing, which is don't be shy. Don't worry too much about the messiness, about the cleanliness of the notes. Obviously, you wanna be in tune. That's something that is definitely you have to have as a baseline, but I'm talking about the right hand, right? You don't have to be too clean in this particular piece. Once you get your spiccato going, you can really just bounce it all over the place. That's just an example right there. You probably notice this when you're listening to classical music at times when you're like, oh my gosh, it's so soft, you can't hear anything. And then you raise the volume and then suddenly, 2 minutes later, it's just blasting and it's overloading you. That's the way classical music works, right? That's our effect of building a long phrase and then having the drop happen. You wanna be intentional about that as well. It's called dynamics. Here's an example. You've just had this build. And then you come down here. And then you'll notice that I varied my spiccato. Remember I talked about that? So here we had a pretty broad spiccato. but we vary it up by lightening it. The facial expression, this is part of it. And then you go. So notice that I'm increasing each bar, each measure, right? From but within each bar, I'm also doing this, that I'm doing a little crescendo towards the beginning of each bar again. Right there. That's kind of like the end of the beginning. And then we have this next section, which is like truly rock moment of this like solo. Right, this is where everyone's eyes is on you. There's a little trick here after you play this run up, is to use harmonics right here. You definitely want to not place that first finger all the way down. You want to have just like it lightly above there. That'll just totally save you from, you know, your intonation errors. And then as you play this, those are all harmonics. And again, the pulse. So I'm showing you with my body motion about where the phrase goes so that you can really feel it. Sometimes the phrase is one bar. Sometimes it's even one beat. Here. Dun, 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 dun. That's very intentional. But other times it's like continues across multiple bars. So if I didn't do what I just said, it just sounds very bland. Even with the crescendo, you can tell that all the flavor is lost. So all this. So again, this is the difference between the pros. Then you go on to the next section here. A lot of musicians are too shy about their downbeats. And in a piece like this, you can't be shy. Again. You're not playing for yourself. I think that's the main thing to remind yourself. You're playing for probably a room full of people, if not a hall full of people. And you also have to project above the orchestra. This is something to keep in mind as you're playing. You're not only projecting the sound, or I mean, let's say the notes, you're also projecting the intention of the music. Stuff like that can really, really help. We go on to the next section here, which is there's no phrasing, there's no dynamics, there's no contrast written. You have to come up with this yourself. Again, here. I create a little contrast between the first and second bar just to get that like a little call and response, a little dialogue happening, right? I don't always go further and, you know, harder all the time. I kind of actually backed away there as we got higher. I actually got a little lighter there. Then finally here, this is a really interesting moment. Dun, 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 bum, bum, bum. You'll notice that in this moment here, there's no additional accents written in there, but I put them in anyway. It's like the extra pulse within the pulse. So we established that there was like a baseline pulse. Dum, dum, bum, 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 ba. Yum, bum, bum, bum. Now that you've established that in the first half of the piece, you can start to play against that. So it's kind of like setting an intention and setting a rhythm, right? Everyone already expects you to do that, but then you can play against it once you've established that. So what I like to do here is So sometimes I do this. Dum, bum, bum. And other times I do this. So you can notice that there's two dun, 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 bum, that there's like a hemiola kind of effect happening. I can play it better than I can explain it. And then moving on, you just basically, yeah. So you notice that it changes up, and then you gotta just change up the pulse. You have to play against that rhythm. And there you have it. That's how you do the Vivaldi Summer like a pro, all the way to the end. So I'll see you in your practice room on Tonic. Don't forget to sign up for the challenge.